if you, you know, swim in a public pool, you guys, not only are you going to get pregnant, you're also going to get pregnant with AIDS. It's like, hot take, giving people AIDS is an immediate harm. Refocus here is this is definitionally rape by deception. Definitionally, okay? If you had a client that was it wouldn't be like, well, you have an ethical responsibility to maintain your client's privacy. Your client be raped, you should report that. What are you talking about? What are you talking about right now? Yeah, you guys, it's really not that dangerous because it's only one person that's getting the AIDS. It's really not that big of a deal. What is one person in the bucket of AIDS? What is it? Who cares? It's one person. All right, so this was, you know, forced into the forefront of my consciousness against my will. I don't remember who the f sent this to me. Anyway, somebody reminded me of this, and this was something that I mentioned before. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but let me get this up for you guys. Quite a while ago, somebody commented on one of my videos that I made about Poppy, and kind of piqued my interest, but I don't think I ever saw the video where this take came from. And recently somebody linked that video, and I was like, oh boy, this is a take if I've ever seen one, okay? So let's see what we have here. Let's go ahead and switcheroonie, guys. So I can't really see this very well, unfortunately. Let's do like this. It doesn't matter because I'm going to read it to you guys anyway, but okay. So this is from a while ago, but this person said, a curious take in the comments of a VOD. Poppy argued with me that in the hypothetical, please again, this was a hypothetical scenario, that an HIV positive person claiming managed status with low viral load, but they're already an unreliable narrator here, who was having unprotected sex with their partner, a person who they had not disclosed their status to, but had confided this duplicitous practice to her during a session, so that she had no duty to disclose as a licensed therapist to her partner, public health, and or the appropriate social services and law enforcement. Why? Because she felt the client's lie of omission did not constitute the immediate risk of acute harm, i.e. suicide or violence, to the client and or the other person, only that created an obligation to report. This is regardless of the potential for the partner to contract, even at a low viral load, yes, low, now manageable, but still incurable communicable disease, and completely glossing over the fact that the partner could not, in fact, follow the Fry's model and consent to said intimate acts because there was a missing crucial piece of info because, you know, deception. That's like having a client who admits that they're constantly stealthing their partner, but because they have a low sperm count, I can live with it. See you next week. So anyway, somebody left this comment on one of my videos quite a while ago, and I found it interesting. I never went and watched this video, but I figured that we could watch this video today, okay? Because why not, you guys? Let's treat ourselves. Let's treat ourselves. Because I thought, wow, what a take, okay? What a take. So this is from a VOD. This is from 3 years ago. May 8th, 2021, okay? This is where this take comes from. That if you're, like, a therapist and your client says to you, like, hey, I have HIV and I'm fucking all these people unprotected, do you as a therapist have an ethical obligation to report that person? Like, is it within, you know, ethical boundaries for you to inform the proper people that this person is, you know, having sex with people while HIV positive without disclosing? So that's where that take came from. The other thing that I would like to call attention to, I wonder if I can find this really quickly. I don't know if I will be able to. Oh no, they deleted their fucking Twitter account, so it's gone. Anyway, so this is what I'm looking at here. I'll show you guys in 1 second. So this is them with their prep takes. So Poppy's is deleted, but Sage was also talking about this, and it was kind of a copy paste of the exact same take. So anyway, this was when they were all on like the PrEP discourse. And for people who don't know what PrEP is like an antiviral medication. So if you do have HIV, if you take PrEP, it not only helps diminish like the spread of PrEP. So like you're taking PrEP, it prevents you at a greater, you know, likelihood to not contract HIV. And then also if you're HIV positive, it helps diminish like your viral load. So your, you know, likelihood of spreading it as well. So Dev our king. Dev says, I have a monogamous relationship with confirmed clean people who I trust enough not to step out. If you think that's, quote, incel gamer brain rot, then the problem is, once again, your behavior. So Sage was going back and forth, and obviously she copy-pasted this take from Poppy, but Bro really thinks that monogamous means never has casual sex. If you're in a committed relationship with somebody, you're not having casual sex. A monogamous relationship, you're not having casual sex with other people. You are monogamous with your one sexual partner. Mono people get STIs. Literally, the majority of people who contract them, ID is mono. Also, being exclusive does not mean that you shouldn't take precautions. You're also just doing moral panic over basic health and safety. So their whole take on all of this, and I guess that I could look in here and see if there's more screenshots, but this is like the biggest one, is where they're saying that everybody should be taking PrEP. Like, everybody should be taking it. Like, if you are a human being, you should be taking PrEP. And I think that's fucking crazy. If you're, in a monogamous relationship, you know that your partner is HIV negative, you're not having, casual sex, you're in a committed monogamous relationship, there's literally no fucking reason for you to take PrEP. Like, there just isn't. And if anything, if we're talking about moral panic here, the moral panic is actually like scaring people into thinking that you can like get AIDS from like a fucking toilet seat, or like that at any waking moment you are going to be raped by somebody who has HIV and contract it. It's like, that's not really how that works, right? Like, I would say realistically, like, feeding into the moral panic is being like, you guys need to be taking PrEP because AIDS is literally lurking around every single fucking corner. If you drink off of grandma's drink and she has AIDS, you're gonna fucking get AIDS. If you swim in a public pool, you guys, not only are you gonna get pregnant, you're also going to get pregnant with AIDS. It's like, that's the moral panic in this like entire casual conversation, right? Is that actually the moral panic is scaring people into thinking that they're at an ever-growing risk of contracting AIDS. Like, at any second of any moment of any day, AIDS could get you. Like, no. What? You do legally have to tell people if you have AIDS. Legal precedent for disclosing HIV status. Legal precedent generally says that individuals with HIV have a legal duty to disclose their status before engaging in sexual acts that pose, quote, significant risk or serious bodily harm, end quote, meaning if not disclosed, it could constitute a lack of informed consent. So 13 states have laws that if you do not disclose that you have AIDS, or HIV. Okay, the federal law that helps you protect you. Okay, there's anti-discrimination. Let's see. Disclosure to state and federal governments. No. Disclosure before sex or sharing needles. Under some state laws, you must share that you have HIV status to other people if there's a risk that you could pass the virus to them. This is through sex or sharing needles to inject drugs. In some states, health departments require healthcare providers to report the names and addresses of your sex or needle sharing partner, so they know this information. They must do this even if you don't offer it. 13 states have laws that require you to disclose that if you have HIV positive to any person before you have vaginal, anal, or oral sex. Some states can charge you with a crime if you do not disclose HIV positive status, even if you use a condom, your partner isn't infected after the encounter, or you take antiviral medication to like control your viral load. These laws are designed to help prevent the spread of HIV. So there are no longer any laws that make non-disclosure of HIV a crime in Arizona, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maine, New Mexico, Washington, D.C. In most states, you're only required to disclose HIV status if you know it at the time that you're having sex, but in Indiana and North Carolina, you're required to contact previous partners and let them know that you've tested positive. So, like, yeah, I mean, that's part of, like, the informed consent. And the other thing that I think, this is, like, my conservative take of the day. There's a really, like, blasé attitude about STDs and STIs, like, in society these days. And to an extent, like, that's okay. Like, a lot of STDs or STIs, like, are not as, life-ending as people think. Like, chlamydia, syphilis, like, these kinds of things, if you catch them, like, yes, it's a big deal you're contracting an STD or an STI, but it's also, like, treatable, so it's not, like, the end of the fucking world. With STIs are infections that you can, take, medication to like get rid of or whatever. With STDs that are like incurable, so like HIV, herpes, HPV, things like that, those are like actually a pretty big fucking deal, right? Because you have that for life. That's actually a pretty big fucking deal. And I think it's HSV too. There's a difference between them. What herpes is the? There's type 1 and type 2. Okay, HSV2 is the genital herpes, and then HSV1 is like cold sores. I think it's like, it's an overwhelming amount of people that have HSV1 because it's like cold sores. What percentage of the population has HSV1? 64% of the global population have HSV1, meaning they have type 1. So that's just cold sores. But HSV2 is a pretty big deal. So I think that there's kind of like this blasé attitude about STIs and STDs, which is kind of like a problem because, like, yeah, sure, you can take antibiotics and get rid of a lot of them, but also, like, you shouldn't be like just like spreading those around for fucking shits and giggles, right? Like, that's still kind of a big deal that, like, you give somebody an STD or an STI, right? Remember it, agreed. I've been told just to assume everyone is infected plus lying about it and should be unprepped no matter how careful I am about dating. It sucks. Well, it's like, no, like, AIDS isn't gonna like jump out of an alleyway and get you, you guys. You don't have to be like terrified of AIDS. Like, that's the moral panic. That's like what the whole issue with like Grid was. It's like everybody was like, oh my God, like, do you guys remember when it was the biggest deal in the entire world that Princess Diana like shook hands with somebody with AIDS? Everybody was like, oh, she's gonna get AIDS. Like, that's literally what this is. It's like, sorry, I actually can't go out to dinner and tapas with you unless I take my PrEP because you might give me AIDS. It's like, what is that? What are you talking about? But yeah. That would actually constitute rape by deception. If you knowingly have sex with somebody and you know that you're HIV positive and you don't disclose that, that actually constitutes rape by deception. Just for the laymen in the class late to the party. So we're going to listen to Poppy talk to us about why it's actually unethical for you as a practitioner, as a clinician, to not report somebody who is basically, you know, raping people via deception by having sex with them and not disclosing that they're HIV positive. Okay, that's what we're gonna listen to really quick. Okay, so yes, it does only get worse. So let's begin, shall we?
To breach confidentiality.
Oh, hang on, I gotta back up a little bit.
To a couple scenarios. Yes, Thanagor, I mean the Step on Me Mommy game, Vampire Mommy. Someday I hope to achieve her level of
jump scare,
prestige.
Sorry. Also, this is on 1.5, just for the record. We are still just talking this slow.
So, here's the thing. I'll give you scenarios and tell you about them. I think I mentioned this one on stream before, but if I didn't, I'll go over it again. The scenario was presented to us as this.
And this was prompted by what's your spiciest take, okay? This is what prompted this. Somebody was like, what is your spiciest take, okay?
Our teacher during a class said, let's say a client comes to you and says that they are HIV positive. And this person is sleeping indiscriminately without protection with partners. Here's the question. Is that sufficient enough immediate harm to breach
Yes. Yes.
confidentiality? What do you guys think?
What's up, Jackster? Answer, yes. Without hesitation.
I just want to see a couple people in chat before I go on. If a client tells a therapist that they are HIV positive and sleeping with people indiscriminately without protection, is that enough?
Yes, Mother Mary is right here, and she is very unhappy. Mother Mary, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Thank you, Queen.
To break confidentiality under the idea of immediate harm?
Yes. Gotta stay hydrated. Important. Everybody, hydrate. Hydrate.
In the scenario, no, Brittany, they are not telling the people. Yes, they are doing it recently and going to do it again.
And so this is the part, okay? So, like, right off the bat, you could say yes, easily. But the additional part is, like, they're going to do it again, right? And that's the concern, right? Because if somebody comes to you and they say, in the past, I've done blah, 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 but I have no intention of doing it again in the future. Like, okay, well, that's one thing. I still think that's shitty, and you shouldn't have done that, and that was wrong. Boo hiss, right? But if somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, so I have this thing where I like to fuck people. I have HIV. I like to fuck people and not tell them, okay, and possibly give them AIDS, okay? I might do that, okay? And I'm doing it right now, and I'm also gonna do it again. Yes, that is where you're like, okay, bro, but I have to tell somebody about this. What? Sorry for the dead air, guys. It's not me.
The question of who you report that to breach confidentiality, like if someone tells me, for example, they're going to go murder their wife, I call the police. Just that simple. Yeah, if they say they're going to do immediate harm, you call the police.
Hot take: giving people AIDS is an immediate harm. that's pretty immediate. Oh God, please help me, guys. I could think of a hypothetical where, like, if somebody says, "Hey, yesterday, I was cooking dinner and my kid pissed me off and I punched my kid in the face." If I don't know this person very well and I don't have any evidence of this occurring, like, is it illegal for me to not report that if I don't, have evidence that this thing occurred? I don't know. That's a good question. But like, if my friend like brings their kid over and the kid is like flinching every time they like make a movement and they have like a big fucking black eye, like you would say in that instance, like, yeah, it would be, as a mandatory reporter, you could be held liable for not reporting that. But I think especially when it comes to like somebody who is your client reporting these things, I think that you do have to report those things legally, I think. But as like, a clinician, or I keep wanting to say that, as a clinician who is like reporting these things, like you do have like an ethical responsibility. If it's like your client who's saying shit like this, like that is something that you like have to report. But I could see like gray areas where it's like, I don't even know if this actually happened. Additionally, like if you have a client that's an unreliable narrator or like somebody that's like delusional or something like that, like I could see like kind of like questions or kind of like, is this really something to report? I'm not sure. Like I could see that, but you would just like seek advice from, like a supervisor or like a higher up or whatever the fuck. You wouldn't just be like, well, I'm not going to report it. Oh, well, good luck. Get fucked. Like there's obviously questions, but I mean, this I think is very obviously not the line. I think the line is way farther away from where we are. You know what I mean? It does violate the Fry's model. So basically, it violates the Fry's model because you're essentially doing rape by deception, because people aren't able to make an informed decision if they want to have sex with somebody, knowing or not knowing if they have like an incurable STD, right? So arguably, Poppy is saying like, no, I have a client who comes to me. The client is a giga rapist, and I'm not going to report them because there's no immediate harm. Oh, that's a take. Yeah, like, hey, just so you know, if you tell me crazy shit, I do have to report it, just so you know. Just so you're aware. And that usually, that's something that, like, therapists will disclose to you if you have a therapist that knows what they're doing, right? Where it's like, listen, like, there's confidentiality involved in our meetings, right? Like, I'm not gonna, like, tell your mom all the hot tea that you're spilling to me. But if you tell me I'm going to redacted my mom, I do have to tell her that, and I do have to tell the police that, just so you know. Like, unless there's, plan, intent, action, whatever the fuck. And the other part, too, with this is, like, there's clear intent to continue to do it, and there's a plan to continue to do it, because that's, like, one of the things that you look at for risk assessment, right? Is, like, if somebody's like, I had a horrible week at work, I'm going to kill myself in a video game. That's not really reportable. But it's like, I had a horrible week at work. I'm going to stop on my way home from work tomorrow. I'm going to purchase a Glock 19. I'm going to go home. I'm going to get redacted my entire family, including the dog, and then I'm going to redacted myself, and I'm going to leave a note. I already have the note written down, and I left it on my dresser this morning, so I'm all done with it. That's reportable, right? Because we have intent, we have a plan, we have the means. There's, like all the criteria where it's like intent, means, plan, blah, 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 whatever the fuck. Hey, I have AIDS, and I'm going to give it to other people. I'm going to do it. I have a plan. I've done it before, and I'm going to do it again. Yes, that's reportable, but yeah.
Girl therapist, all one word, and /tip. Money goes to help me and my partner survive, because they deal with chronic illness. So do you guys want the answer?
And then I love the arrogance here that there is, like, you guys want the answer, not like this is like a moral, like, kind of question where it's like you as an individual, like, where do you draw that line? No. Poppy is right, and if you don't agree with Poppy, you're actually giving the wrong answer, and you are sentenced to 10 months hard labor in the gooey mines, guys. God, so much dead air.
So I want to remind everybody that the question that prompted this hypothetical was Brittany asking, what are some of your most spicy takes? And so the answer I'll give you is this. If any of you did that, let's say you were a therapist and you breached that person's confidentiality, you would be doing direct harm to your client with no evidence of immediate harm.
No evidence of immediate harm. You arguably don't have evidence if your client says that they're going to kill themselves in a video game. You arguably don't have evidence of that. If your client comes to you and says that they're being abused by a partner or a spouse, you don't have immediate evidence of that, right? So there are instances where there are things that need to be reported. or there's not direct evidence. I don't see the domestic abuse in home. I don't see the financial abuse or the financial neglect. I don't see, the AIDS. I can't see the AIDS with my bare eyes, but like, yeah, there is an immediate harm there. Yes, that you are spreading an incurable STI that has an incredibly high mortality rate. At least, it's better now. But like, yeah, this is like an incurable disease that somebody has to live with for the rest of their life, which impacts their immune system. Yeah, that's a pretty serious fucking thing, guys.
Here's my reasoning. Minerva's going in the right direction. So think about this. I want you to consider a couple different things. First off, if you actually go to the CDC website, you'll actually notice that, if I remember correctly, the actual level of contracting HIV is around 8, and this is with anal sex, 8 out of 10,000. Not 80, not 800.
So we're doing like the statistical probability that somebody will contract AIDS, not looking at the harm that somebody might, and that they are not informed because otherwise they would avoid that situation, right? Because you can say, let's say I had a really bad day today, you guys, and I'm going to go and shoot up some smack. All right, I'm going to do it. I'm taking the leap. We're doing hard drugs. We finally crossed the line. I'm going to do it, okay? I'm going to do it. If I share a needle with someone who does not disclose to me that they have HIV, that is negligent because I would have made a different choice otherwise, okay? If I would have known that the guy that I was bumming a needle from had HIV, maybe I would have made a different choice, and that would have given me agency over my choice to directly put myself in harm. Because to an extent, everybody has a right to endanger like themselves to a certain extent, right? Like we would say, as people on the left, that like if somebody wants to like shoot up smack, whatever, dude, it's a free country. Do whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. Okay, you kind of have a right to do that. Or even if we branch a little bit into like legal consumption of things like this, alcohol is harmful. Alcohol damages every cell in your body. Alcohol is very harmful for you. We let people make that choice. They can choose to engage with that quote unquote harm. Smoking cigarettes is harmful, causes cancer, and you die. We allow people to make the choice to engage with that harm if they so choose. Let's say that somebody is selling cigarettes and they are dipping the cigarettes in formaldehyde and making PCP. Let's say that I buy cigarettes and I don't know that. That is a direct harm to me because I can make the choice, the informed choice to say, yes, I do want your PCP-laced cigarettes because I'm here for a good time, not for a long time. Or with the knowledge, the informed part of consent, I can say, no, that is not something that I want to do. I'm going to have a different option, right? It's all about agency and choice. This is why, like, drugging people is like a really big fucking no-no faux pas. Like, let's just say that you have, let's say that you're a therapist. Let's say that you have a client, and your client comes to you and they say, I roofie people with Molly. I don't rape them, I don't molest them, I don't do anything like that, but I do, anytime that somebody orders a drink from me, I will put Molly in it because I want them to have a really good time. And let's say we look up the statistics and we say, okay, MDMA in general is not like very harmful. People don't really overdose and die on MDMA unless they have serotonin, unless they are taking like SSRIs and they can get serotonin syndrome, which is rare. Okay, that's very rare. It's very, very uncommon for people to like die from taking Molly. And there's a lot of positive effects from taking MDMA or taking Molly, right? Like you're more social, you feel good, it's euphoric, blah, 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 whatever the fuck. So the likelihood that this person is going to die because I drug them with MDMA versus like Rohypnol or something like that, therefore there is no immediate harm because statistically speaking, they're not going to die from taking it. Do we not see how fucking insane this is? Do you not see how that's like the dumbest fucking thing you've ever heard in your entire life? Well, Your Honor, I didn't drug them with like roofies. I just gave them Molly because I wanted them to have a good time. Like, no, I didn't tell them that I put it in their drink, but statistically speaking, they weren't gonna die. What kind of a fucking take? This is insane. This is insane, bro. This is fucking insane. That's fucking insane. Live, laugh, love. Live fast, die young. Bad girls do it well. That's all I'm going to say, okay?
8. So out of an 8 to 10,000, you're saying you would report this person.
Yeah, guys, the probability of getting killed in a car accident is like very low. So it's actually fine if you run people over with your car because statistically speaking, most people don't die by getting run over by a car. So
now let's further go with the information I didn't provide you. No one here asked if this person was on a viral regimen because there are many people who live with HIV whose viral load is below 1%.
But the thing is like, even if your viral load is that low, there's still a chance for contraction and there's still like detectable amounts in your blood, right? Like even if the transmission rate is like 0.0000001%. And that's like one of the things too is like, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but like a lot of people will be like, oh, you know, I'm HIV positive, but I'm on PrEP and I'm undetectable. And then people will be like, you know, still like, oh, you know, I'm actually not interested in hooking up, but thank you for telling me, blah, blah, blah. And then people get really weird about it. They're like, but I'm undetectable. And it's like, okay, but that's still like a choice that somebody can make where they're like, yes, there's the chance is almost zero, but it's never zero. And so it's fair if somebody is like, no, actually, I appreciate you sharing that with me, but I'm also just like not willing to roll the dice on that one, Chief, for whatever reason. And I think that's fine. I don't know, dude. People are weird. People are weird. People are weird.
Every single one of you would potentially condemn this person to some sort of legal problem because the fact is people emotionally reason
because what they're doing is illegal
and that this is bad.
But why would you subject somebody who's doing something illegal to legal consequences? Curious.
They don't actually look at the data. So when this hypothetical came into my class that I was part of, I was the only person arguing against many people in the class.
Stunning and brave.
Especially people from various like subgroups who very much were damaged by HIV. Because they would have reported and they probably would have lost their licenses. Or at very least took a fucking ding on their license. And
I don't believe that this is true, even kind of. I don't think that you would lose your license or get a quote-unquote ding on your license if you have a client who is expressing to you like that they have knowingly slept with people while being HIV positive without disclosing, and they have the intent, the plan, the means, or whatever to do it again. I find that unfucking believable.
And quite possibly condemned their client to jail. I need you to remember that in the United States, there are states where if you knowingly have sex with someone with HIV, it can be considered a felony.
Well, and I mean, it should be, because you're literally infecting people with like a disease out of negligence. That's like a problem. It's like if I'm pretty sure for a while there, like that's why spitting on people is a felony. Like it's more than just assault, right? Like you can get like simple assault or like simple battery if you like shove somebody or whatever. But if you spit on somebody, that's like an immediate felony. That's like aggravated assault because whoever's spitting on you could have like a disease, and that's kind of scary, right? And that's fair because this person that is spitting in your fucking face could have some like fucking crazy Ebola shit or something like that. Like, yeah, when you amp the ante like that, there is like more serious consequences to it. Like, is that really surprising? Is that really surprising?
If you were to breach confidentiality, you would not be only violating that client's rights without further data.
Your rights stop when your rights to confidentiality stop when you're an immediate risk or harm to yourself or others. Like that's where that stops. And potentially infecting somebody with an incurable disease falls under that category. Like what if, I'm curious about this take. I'm sure that you guys are all good noodles, so you'll agree with me on this. If somebody was knowingly positive with COVID and they like walked around like spitting on door handles and like licking people's food and shit like that, that would be, yeah, you should get in a lot of fucking trouble for that. Because what if some sickly old grandma opens the door with the door handle that you just fucking licked? Congratulations, you just condemned grandma to die. Like, yeah. I would imagine so, no? Or like, what if you're somebody that has actual Ebola? Like, say that you contract Ebola and you're walking around like coughing in people's faces, spitting on people, like rubbing your Ebola contracted hands all over the groceries at the grocery store. You're like opening the bananas and rubbing your Ebola on everything. Yeah, that's kind of a big fucking deal, dude. That's kind of like a big fucking deal, is it not?
Data. You would destroy the trust in them, which would leave you without the ability to convince them to change this behavior, and potentially sending them to jail for incredibly draconic and very, very.
And this is also very important too. Also, if you know that your hypothetical client is lying through omission with their sex partners, how could you trust them with regards to viral load in medicine? Very true. So they've already disclosed that they're like an unreliable narrator because they're willing to lie to their partners. It's very feasible that they might be, lying to you. And then if there's that level of deception there's a fair assumption that they might be unreliable with their medication management as well, which is a problem. And then the other part of all of this that I want to refocus here is this is definitionally rape by deception. Definitionally rape by deception, okay? If you had a client that was raping It wouldn't be like, well, you have an ethical responsibility to maintain your client's privacy. Your client be raping, you should report that. What are you talking about? What are you talking about right now?
Homophobic laws.
It's homophobic.
And everybody in this chat just said that they would initially, until they thought about it for a moment.
Oh, no. We've thought about it quite intensely. We're still here.
When you discuss the notion of harm, you need to be fucking clear. As a counselor, my job is to protect and take care of my client. Now, I want to be clear.
But that doesn't come at the expense of other people. You can be like a good clinician and advocate for your client and like be, you know, the person that's in your client's corner and blah, 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 like all that, right? Like you can be that person, but clients are not like always good eggs, right? You can have people who are bad eggs, and sometimes those, like, there are consequences to actions like that, right? And your responsibility is not solely to like your client, right? Your responsibility is to other people who may be harmed by your client, right? Like, your responsibility is to your client, sure. But let's say that your client was like, I'm gonna kill my mom in a video game. It's like, well, suddenly your loyalties shift a little bit, right? Where we have to look out for other people. We have to be considerate of other people who are in harm's way, right? Like, what?
There's a difference between having a reason to breach confidentiality and considering something ethical. I think it is ethical to tell clients that they should be more open with their partners about who they have sex with. I also think it's important to ask clarifying questions like, are you on some sort of antiviral regimen that is lowering your load?
Miss Therapist, I am going to kill people in a video game. I have a plan. I have a weapon. I have a date. I have a time. I have a map. I have everything set out. This is my final goodbye, okay? As a therapist, it's your job to ask questions. Well, is it a 22? Because people usually don't die if they get shot by a 22. That will help me decide if I want to report this or not. Because if it's like anything higher than a 22, then probably I'll report it. What about the knife? Talk to me about the length of the knife that you plan to use to carry out your domestic terror attack. Like, talk to me about the length. Oh, okay, so like most pocket knives that are under like 3 inches aren't really lethal, right? Okay, so maybe, okay, yeah, you're right. I won't report that one. Yeah, you're right. Good call.
Because my loyalty first and foremost is to them. I breach confidentiality when it is important for the safety of a human being. And because the rate...
I'm sorry, guys, but contracting AIDS, your safety is not important. Sorry, guys.
...is so low. I want you to consider the math on this, right? So let me bring up...
Let's get out the calculator.
I might be doing this math a little off, but it brings up my point. Okay, so... All right, so let's do this. So 8... 10,000. That's the percentage you're willing to fucking ruin a person's life over.
What's the percentage chance that somebody dies from an overdose from MDMA? Percentage of people who die from taking MDMA. Oh, wow, the fatalities are 47 and 100. No. Most fatalities from taking ecstasy are a result of a combination of factors, because you're not usually just taking Molly, you're usually taking another. Let's do percentage of people who die from psilocybin. And I can never spell this. Psilocybin. I can never spell this right. In scientific literature, just 2 deaths have been attributed to psilocybin overdoses with no concomitant use of other drugs. So let's just say, hypothetically, okay, in the history of the world, there have been 2 people that have died from magic mushrooms. There's no harm in me sprinkling a little bit of magic mushrooms in everybody's drink when they come over to my house for girl time or hang out and yap. There's no harm in me drugging them with magic mushrooms because they can't possibly overdose from it and die. It's virtually unheard of. It's almost impossible to overdose and die from magic mushrooms. So there's no immediate harm in me drugging people with magic mushrooms. So are you going to report me? Even though I'm violating people's consent, even though I'm causing people harm by taking away their agency, their choice, and their informed consent. And I could possibly kill them. Very rare, very unheard of, but I could possibly kill this person. Well, the harm is so low, who cares? Okay, based.
If you can't read that, lean closer. It's 0.008. Now, let's times that by someone who's on some kind of antiviral, so less than 1%, we'll do 0.1. So 0.0008. So you're talking about that level of percentage of chance. If I'm doing my math right, I might be slightly off.
harm isn't about a percentage of chance. Harm is about like the intent to commit harm, right? So like this is just like pure what's the one I'm thinking of? It's like consequentialist brain rot. I could pull out a gun right now and shoot intensive porpoises right in the fucking face, okay? In a video game. Let's say that I do that. And let's say that intensive porpoises lives, but in the process of going to the hospital and getting treated, intensive porpoises decides or discovers that intensive porpoises had a massive brain tumor, and I shot intensive porpoises so perfectly in the face that it just obliterated the fucking tumor, and now intensive porpoises is cancer-free because of me and my choice to shoot intensive porpoises in the face in a video game, okay? Was there harm in that action? No, intensive porpoises lived, and intensive porpoises got their cancer cured. There was no harm there. There was a harm, because I intended to hurt intensive porpoises. I shot intensive porpoises in the face in a video game. That's the harm. There doesn't have to be a negative outcome for a harm to have occurred. There are certainly instances where people are raped or assaulted or whatever the fuck, and they don't suffer negative consequences. That happened to them, but they don't suffer negative consequences. Should we not report that? What if you're somebody who date rapes and you're clean and the person goes to sleep, you roofie them, they go to sleep, they're raped, they wake up and they never know? Was there a harm that was committed there because there were no tangible negative consequences? Yes, somebody was raping. That's the harm. The harm doesn't have to have a tangible negative impact for it to be harmful or to be worthy of reporting. I ran someone over with my car. I ran over their legs with my car, but little did I know, they didn't have any legs. They were prosthetics, so they weren't hurt at all. So there's no point in reporting me for running this person over with my car because they weren't harmed. What is this argument? This is the RGR argument. This is the RGR argument. You're not wrong. Ugh.
Math is not my strong. But do you understand my fucking point here?
No.
We have to be careful about how we think about these things. Now, I'm going to make an analogous example, but I will tell you the rest of that story first.
Let's make an analogous
example. The simple
example.
fact is this. When the teacher brought up this hypothetical, a lot of people in class said some downright fucking awful shit about people with HIV.
Also, this is not an analogous example, by the way. This is like an extension. This is like an elaboration of what you were talking about.
There's a lot of fucking judgments for people, especially religious people, and various subgroupings tend to be very religious.
True, I hate religious people.
They have a doctorate in psychology. This person's practiced for years. This person's married, has a husband, has adopted children, and they've been HIV positive since they were a teen. All of these people said a bunch of really fucking stigmatizing bullshit in front of a person who was living with HIV, whose viral load was 0.01. They could not find living fucking.
Yeah, but if that person's husband did not know that they were HIV positive, that's a really big fucking deal, especially if they have kids, because mother to infant HIV transmission is like a thing. Yeah, if this person is positive for HIV and they are undetectable, which is, you know, reasonable these days with the medication that we have available to us. Yeah, the husband should know, and it would be unethical if this person was married to this guy for however long and she never disclosed that she had HIV and they had kids together. That would be bad. That would be wrong. Yes.
Fucking virus in her fucking blood. And this person actively is the type of person who would get fucked by this type of violation of confidentiality.
Actually, not really at all, because if she was married to her husband and her husband knew about it, like, there would be no need to report anything. Now, if you had this is another, I guess you could say, question, where it's like if you have somebody who's in a long-term committed relationship and they share with you that they are HIV positive and their long-term partner doesn't know, it would be the same kind of thing. It's like, sure, like, they haven't contracted it yet, but even the legal statute is that, like, they don't have to not contract it for it still to be like a crime, right? Like, if you have sex with somebody that, and you know that you have HIV, but that person doesn't contract HIV, it's still a crime because you didn't disclose, because it's essentially rape by deception, right? And you endangered that person by not allowing them to make, like, a, you know, like an informed choice about that, but whatever.
Because no one else wanted to look up the CDC records and instead wanted to report what their feelings. So I tell you the story to lead into my actual spicy take, because that's pretty solid.
It's really not at all.
This is going to get me canceled. So I think there is an issue with the way that we handle the stigma around pedophilia. And I want to separate this into two.
Oh, I forgot that this take gets worse. Sorry. I forgot, guys. My bad.
Separate discussions.
Brace yourselves.
When I talk about this, I am talking about non-acting pedophiles. Acting pedophiles are...
I mean, everybody... very stunning and brave, but I think that pedophilia and paraphilias like that should be stigmatized, yes. We should socially discourage those as much as humanly fucking possible, yes. They should be stigmatized. They definitely should be stigmatized, okay?
Different issue. These people have convinced themselves that this is something that is wanted by their victims. These are people who have gone too far off the boat. They're done. We have to talk about different...
Not always, though. Like, there are people who harm children because they're not like, oh, well, you know, Your Honor, the minor came onto me. Like, there are people who do things like that in, like, to harm because they want to hurt other people, but...
Different systems for them. Not making those arguments today. But one of the points that I think is really good to notice here, and Thanagor, yes, viruses are about the idea of numerous people spreading them. That's how they overall take things. You want to look at the CDC records. Maybe something has changed, but that's my memory of it. And again, different types of...
Yeah, you guys, it's really not that dangerous because it's only one person that's getting the AIDS. It's really not that big of a deal. What is one person in the bucket of AIDS? What is it? Who cares? It's one
sex
person.
Create different types of risk. I believe penile vaginal intercourse has a different number, although it's higher likelihood for the woman slightly. Right? Basically, if something's going into something, there's a higher likelihood of infection.
Something going into something.
My point is this. I think there's a problem in mental health that when somebody comes in, therapists get very judgy. And the issue with that holding of stigma is that because they can't get their shit together for 5 minutes and withhold judgment, clients are afraid to bring up things they're dealing with. And in the case of somebody who's a non-acting pedophile, what you're essentially doing is harm. We know that there's
some things do necessitate judgment in order to make like good decisions and like good choices after the fact. Like one of the things that a lot of people talk about, especially in DBT, is being able to like look at situations and events without judgment, because sometimes judgment can kind of like fuck up your process here. Where like, I want McDonald's for dinner. Babe, can we get McDonald's for dinner? No, Malcolm, we can't have McDonald's for dinner. My wife fucking hates me. She wants me to starve to death. She doesn't even love me anymore. I bet that she's probably cheating on me with somebody else that she's letting get McDonald's for dinner. I bet that's what's happening. Without my judgment, maybe it's like, we literally had McDonald's yesterday. Maybe she's not in the mood for McDonald's. Maybe she actually made dinner already, and I don't need McDonald's. Maybe there's already dinner at home, okay? That's without judgment. In certain situations, judgment is appropriate and judgment is necessary to help balance your reactions to certain things. So if somebody comes to me and they say, my boyfriend, I just found out that my boyfriend has been cheating on me for the last 8 years, okay? And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to have this conversation. I don't know if I want to stay or if I want to go. Sometimes your judgment, your reflexive judgment of like, that's a shitty thing to do, I would leave him. Sometimes that judgment is helpful because that might be something that person needs to hear, right? Maybe that judgment is offering utility in the situation. To say that like it is important to be void of judgment at all times is just unhelpful and untrue.
There's a stigma in clinicians about dealing with folks who have these types of urges. We also know there are many people that have these urges that don't act. There's a number of factors that lead to why they do. Many of them have to do with stuff going on with them. There's a number of discussions we had there. But the people that don't, when we act with stigma towards them, that is, we treat them like they're already criminals, that they've done something wrong already. What we do is we essentially...
Thought crimes! It's like, yeah, I mean, if you think that kids are hot, that's wrong. Yeah. Stunning and brave take, I know.
Essentially push them away from working on themselves and essentially push them to eventually acting.
I would like information on this because I don't think that this is true at all. The continued stigmatization encourages people to act. I don't think that's true at all. I think the opposite is actually true. Is like when you allow people to indulge in these paraphilias, they're actually like more likely to offend at higher rates because they're indulging in their predilection. So like realistically, I would like to see information on this because I do not believe that like with stigma comes people's like more willingness to like act on it. So somebody is like, hey, I think that Pokemon are really hot. And everybody's like, ew, what the fuck? What do you mean Pokemon are hot? What's wrong with you? It's not like you immediately go, that's it, I gotta fuck a Pokemon. Like, I don't think that's as correlated as we're pretending it is.
The reason I say this is because very simply, when you create a stigma around a person who has some sort of thing they can't control.
Paraphilia. You can say the word, it's not a bad word.
You are creating a scenario where you are setting them up to fail. This is true in any given scenario. And we know there are some people who are born with these urges, either due to brain abnormalities, lower IQ, a number of other fucking weird-ass things. Regardless of what's the actual cause, there seems to be ways in which this is pushed by trauma. There's ways in which this seems to have some biological correlates. I'm not really arguing it's sourcing. What I'm saying is no one chooses this.
I mean, but people choose to act on it, and that's the problem, right? Is that people choose to act on that. That would be the issue, no?
Funny story. So when I was still a boy, I had inadvertently read an article from Quartz about a really lovely sex worker by the name of Alice Little. Alice was fucking great.
This part's fucked, guys.
She was super cool. She was like 4'9", cute as a butt. Very much an adult. Like she was like 28 or some shit at the time. I ended up finding her on Facebook. Not like I was hunting her down or anything, but one of my friends happened to be a friend of hers. A guy I work with doing presentations.
So she does believe that there's, and there, a lot of stuff that you'll look at, like, it's not necessarily that it's biological per se, but that like it's somewhat of like with a lot of paraphilias, they're akin. Everybody put your loaded guns down for a second, okay? They're like akin to sexualities where it's like this is something that you're attracted to regardless. And you can't really control like that attraction, right? Where like you like think about people who think that feet are hot. They just kind of think feet are hot. I don't know why. Maybe they were exposed to feet too young. I don't know. I don't pretend to know. Okay, but like that there is kind of like this like innate thing that like makes them like certain things. Like you think about like what you're into. If you guys are into like Digimon or whatever it may be that you're into these days. You're just kind of like into it, right? Can't really change that, but you can choose not to act on it, right? So it's not necessarily that it's biological, but the argument is that like it's like this like attraction that isn't really able to be controlled, but you can certainly control like if you do anything about it, right? Like you can think Pokemon are hot and not fuck Pokemon, or consume illicit Pokemon gooning material, right? Like that's the argument basically.
Presentations had been like, oh yeah, I know her, I'll just introduce you. And so I ended up interacting with her. Somewhat, Brittany. That's the biological correlates. There's social ones as well. Anyway. Yeah, it does fall into the guilty, proven innocent seasonal spirit. You're on the right fucking track. And so one of the things I had a really fascinating conversation with her about once is therapists in the area. This was a girl who made like $1,500 an hour to do some weird ass shit with dudes. And trust me, that girl's a trooper. Holy shit. Love sex workers. They're fucking champions. But one of the things she shared with me is that therapists in the area would actually send their clients that were dealing with pedophilic urges to her.
So that's like an immediate report. You have clients who are pedophiles, and you know a sex worker who looks like a little kid, and you're referring your pedo clients to go and fuck this sex worker? You, as a clinician, are referring clients to prostitutes. Yeah. Just think about that, guys. Let that sink in a little bit. You're a therapist, and you are referring your clients to a prostitute. It looks like a child. What you're doing with your time as a therapist.
Because giving them an outlet from what they could tell based on everything they could see decreased their likelihood of acting. So
from everything they could see anecdotally, like from their own their client self-report that like, yes, thank you for referring me to this hooker, Miss Therapist. Suddenly I don't feel much like a pedophile anymore. Like based on your own anecdote, when like what data will show is that like people that engage in that predilection or indulge in their paraphilias are more likely to act on them. But you know,
fucking a 28-year-old who's short actively made these people less likely to act.
You have like no way to measure that. You have like no way to measure that. Well, you know, we found all the actors from the original Wizard of Oz and we just let them go fucking crazy. And now they're fine. It's like, what are you talking about right now, bro? What?
I think that's the exact way to handle this. One, because I think sex work should be decriminalized, full stop. But in a lot of ways, I am very reticent, very hesitant to ever condemn someone for something they can't control. A person born with...
I mean, arguably Ted Bundy couldn't control that he loved like murdering people. Jeffrey Dahmer couldn't control that he thought people were tasty. Do we condemn those people? Yeah. I would still say yeah. Like, even if you can't control it, there are still things that are condemnable. You have somebody who's schizophrenic and they have a delusion that their family's dog is possessed by the spirit of Hitler, so they kill the dog. Can we condemn that action because they couldn't really control it because they were experiencing like hallucinations or like delusion that we can't see? Yeah, I can still condemn that action 100%. Yeah, actually. I don't really care if somebody can control or not control something. Like, their actions are still condemnable. 100%. What?
With these urges. There was like a discussion on TED Talks where some woman framed it as an orientation, which was stupid as fuck. That language is loaded and bad.
Well, that's basically what she's arguing for, is that pedophilia is like an orientation. I would say it's a paraphilia. I don't know why people are scared of that word. That's what it is a paraphilia, right?
But the fact is that there is a point in there somewhere, and that is that these people are dealing with something outside of their control. I think we need to look at this differently, and a lot of people don't. That includes therapists. I think there are therapists who make really shit judgments about this because of their own fucking biases or their own trauma. And so what I'm trying to make very clear to you guys is that my belief is this. I believe if someone is a non-acting pedophile, that is, they experience sexual arousal or fantasize about people who are underage, I think there are methods to be able to deal with that make them not a danger to society. Now,
and the way that you do that is not by letting them indulge in those fantasies, by finding prostitutes on Craigslist that look like kids. That's not how you work on that with people. That's not what you do with that. Certainly that's not what you do with that, right?
Someone acts and does harm, I think we need to have a different conversation. I think when someone crosses that line, we need to have some very real questions about what is rehabilitation in that scenario, and also what are they actually
What is rehabilitation?
able to do? Because once someone crosses that line, the likelihood of them doing so again is very...
Do you think the Poppy would want to rehabilitate Hitler? I'm just so curious. Do you think she'd be like, guys, we need to have a conversation about this? I think that we need to talk about how we can rehabilitate Hitler. Guys, no! Don't erect the gallows in order to execute Mussolini. We need to talk about harm versus offense. Harm versus offense. Conflict is not abuse. Have you read this book? Guys, are there any childlike prostitutes in the area?
Very high. Partially because of the way our system's functioning, but there's probably some other stuff going on.
Fuck.
So this might be the conversation that gets me canceled, but that's my genuine take.
If only we had a crystal ball and could peer into the future. This is the conversation. No, the conversation that's going to get you canceled is that you're like, yeah, guys, rape by deception is actually super based. Wait, I was raped by deception. Killer! Guys, we need to have a really honest conversation about how to engage with non-offending pedophiles. I know, let's be best friends with all of them!
I think we need to talk about non-acting pedophiles differently because I think these people are suffering, and I think people's innate ew factor and grossness of it and their way...
Guys, your reflexive ick at pedophiles is problematic. Please stop.
...way of dealing with it makes children harmed. It actually increases the likelihood of a child being harmed.
Evidence, please.
And Brittany, you're correct based on the data. That looks about right to what I had. Well, yeah, it's punitive, retributive. It's like in Contra's Justice video, she talked about the guy who was engaging in it and they decided to set him on fire. Now, I understand the urge, but I don't understand the outcome. And the problem is if you do this at a sort of minority report before the fact idea, again, guilty before proven innocent is a really fucked up idea. Yeah, I think the best way to deal with bad tendencies in general is to incentivize good outcomes, like incentivizing non-acting pedophiles to get therapy or treatment or something. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say good therapy. I would say make it, again, universal healthcare. I would also...
Yeah, good therapy, like referring your client to a hooker.
Argue my ideas, like I think they should be provided access to certain means by which to deal with these urges. Now, obviously, that's...
Like, I cannot move past this, and I don't think that I'll ever be able to move past this, and I'm glad that everybody is here to suffer with me. Like, your recommendation for your client is, like, buy a hooker. What are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about right now? What?
Do not harm anybody. But again, if Alice Little taught me anything, it's that if a guy with these urges goes and fucks her, that's pretty fucking pog. She makes money, and hell...
It's pretty fucking pog. It's pretty pog. I have this really poggers idea for you. There's this hooker right now. Like, very pog.
I would make that fucking, like, a goddamn referral. The fucking state pays for it.
Oh my god.
And then we basically look for good outcomes. This guy goes and sees her, like, once or twice a week, and he
never
anybody? Does anyone else think that's a good idea? Like,
no.
Or am I just off base here?
You're really off base here, bud. Like, significantly off base. You guys, what if we just found somebody who was consenting to getting murdered, and then we just, like, had the state pay for Jeffrey Dahmer to murder and eat them, like, you know, maybe, like, once a week? That sounds really pog to me, you guys. That's very pog. That's very pog. Like, they're consenting to it, so Jeffrey Dahmer can kill and eat them. Like, it's okay. He's consenting. And then he gets the urges out of his system, and then he's not murdering people that don't want to be murdered. Guys, pog! Pog! Isn't that kind of being a pimp? Yes, that is, yes, we are quite literally, pimping out right now. We are pimping out right now, guys. Humanist vampire seeks consenting suicidal person. It's like the fucking Purge. It's like, yeah, dude, if you give my family $1 million, I'll let you kill and cannibalize me. It's like, this is like, do they talk about this to you guys when you go for your therapy degree? Are these the kinds of conversations you guys are having? It's like, hypothetically, if you found somebody who consented to cannibalism, is it ethical to treat the cannibal with the consenting person who wants to be cannibalized? Good questions. Big questions, you guys. Pog.
Now, I want to be very clear again. If I'm going to be canceled for the right things. I am saying this about
Hillbill sirens.
Non-acting. I am not saying this about acting. Acting's a different discussion. I do believe that some level of institutionalization is required there. True. I'm not sure how to do that necessarily because we get into some questions about safety versus the person's personal rights, and I'm not going to just forget those.
Yeah, guys, there's this really big ethical question about like keeping child fuckers away from children. There's a lot of really big ethical questions there. How do you ethically institutionalize someone who's a risk to others? I don't know. That's super weird. Behold, your therapist.
Because I don't really like what they've done. Right? Like, but when we're talking about non-acting people who have been, I'll give an analogous thing. I know people are going to hate this analogy because they're going to think they're not comparable.
Dude, oh, sorry.
If we're willing to forgive issues of socioeconomic class, like people who have received legitimate brain damage, what's going to happen is if you look at those situations like in the 80s where they didn't take out, lead paint out of homes and this caused real harm to people that were low income. Those people didn't go on to commit crimes. We can argue that there's some level of choice there. But again, we put them in scenarios where they may not be able to function with society anymore.
Okay, and this makes me want to like punch myself in the face repeatedly until I pass out and die on the floor in a video game, okay? Because there is a difference between people in low socioeconomic circumstances who make choices that probably aren't the best choices, like engaging in criminality. And if we know anything about criminality and necessity are very closely tied. So people who decide to sell crack aren't just like, I want to sell crack because it's fucking fun. These people are like, I am going to sell crack because there are no economic opportunities in my area. I have a record. I can't get a job. This is something that everybody around me has done and they've been successful. So I'm going to get into this because my needs are not being met by the system that I live in. And that's understandable. Right. So we're talking about people who like steal bread from, Walmart because they don't have enough money to eat. We're comparing that to people who fuck children. Excuse me. Fuck isn't the right word. We're comparing this to people who rape children. That's the comparison. Crime of necessity and circumstance versus something that you want to do because you think it's hot and it gets you off. We're comparing those two things. Oh, well, they had lead poisoning, so it's actually fine, Your Honor. It's like, this has never been a reasonable excuse for criminality or criminal behavior. We can understand how people enter into criminal lifestyles, and we can understand, like, how there needs to be social and, like, structural change to support these people so their needs are being met so they don't have to engage in criminality in order to survive or whatever the fuck. That is not the same as something that is a sexual urge or a sexual want, okay? You are not going to die if you do not bust a nut. You're not gonna fucking die, okay? If you don't eat, you are gonna fucking die. Do we see how these things are maybe just a little bit different? Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Just kind of. Just a little.
More. How much of that is on us? And the same thing with therapists. If we create a scenario in which a person can't seek help without being judged, aren't we somewhat comparable at that point because we've left this person in a situation where they have to deal with this?
And there are people out there that have dedicated their lives to this kind of work, and God bless them. I could never do it. But there are people that do this. The people that like should not be doing this are very clearly Poppy, because these are the people who would be like, no, it's actually fine that you think kids are hot as long as you don't, like actually do anything. I have an idea. I have a friend who's a hooker that looks like a kid. Let's get you set up. Like, there are people that dedicate their entire lives to this kind of research to like how to best like support people that are struggling with this and they want to do better, okay? And they want help and they want, resources and blah, blah, blah. Like, totally understandable. God bless him. Whatever the fuck. This is not it. This is not it.
On their own? That feels very fucked to me.
Facts over feelings, guys.
So yeah, that's probably my spiciest take.
All right, guys, that was the spiciest take. Did everybody love that? Was everybody having so much fun? Was everybody having fun? I can't understand it. I can't understand it. Like, I don't pretend to. I really, truthfully don't pretend to. And I don't want to. I don't get it. I don't want to get it. I don't pretend to get it. I don't think I ever will. It's fucking insanity. It's fucking insanity.